IPP The Trilogy. Did you want to talk about that? I just don't know. I don't know what's going on there.
So IPP The Trilogy is a polemic. So a polemic is an argument for or against something. So I wrote the IPP The Trilogy during the time that I was in HMP Winchester on recall for 2 years. Now, when I said that my mental health got a bit better, what kind of kept me going in HMP Winchester was my ability to write. So over 46% of adult prisoners can't write, and large proportions of them have literacy and numeracy levels of probably a 10 or 11-year-old. So I was very blessed and fortunate and lucky. I was lucky to be able to write, because I started to write, and writing, it gave me a freedom. It gave me a freedom from the despair and hopelessness I was feeling with my mental health and doing an indefinite prison term with no release date, because all the other people in my position serving the IPP sentence, which is now banned, they had a similar sentence in America, 5 to life, which got ruled as unconstitutional, so they banned it. So it's like a life sentence with no release date for, in a lot of cases, in the wider spectrum, quite low level offences in the wider spectrum. So it's kind of like a government vote-winning weapon that they use, and then they get in power, but then it causes great harm to society. And creates a lot of injustice. So being out for 6 years and going back into Winchester, all the short tariff IPP prisoners who were 10 years over tariff now, been in 12, 13 years on a 2-year sentence, they were all skinny, grey, gaunt, covered in self-harm scars, the light in their eye had completely gone, and they were carving chunks out of their wrists, throats, genitals, calf muscles. Some are gouging their eyes out, and some are just cutting their throats and killing themselves. And I saw this with all of them around me, and I was like, this mental health is going to kill me. So if I don't, find
an outlet.
Yeah, but the way it happened, Addy, wasn't me. I mean, I was writing, and I was sending like 1,000-word articles to competitions. And I finished second on an article I did on sex offenders. I finished third in an article in a prestigious competition on segregation, talking about the Quakers experiment and isolation in prison in America. And it was my friend Phil Armstrong, who's got learning difficulties, which have blighted him his whole life and caused him huge difficulties and challenges in life. And he read something I'd written, and he was like, people pay money for this. He was like, and I was laying in the dark, depressed, and he said, you need to use this skill to help others. And that's where IPP, the trilogy, was born, because ever since that day, I just spent my days sitting there writing, and I wrote 40,000 words. But it was such a massive achievement, Addy, because for me to write it, I had to embark on a mammoth mission of investigative journalism from a prison cell with the only resources available to me, paper, pens, rulers and pencils, and that was it. So I had to write. I wrote to over 400 people, organizations. I got every single fact and figure and statistic about the IPP sentence. I researched thoroughly why it was implemented. I went all the way back to the early 90s and the politicization of law and order after 2 high-profile children were killed and murdered. Excuse me. And I researched the entirety of the political background to the IPP sentence, and I basically put all that information into 40,000 words. But the only way, the way that I ended up with a printed academic, professional polemic with a title and a cover and binded was because I'd write a chapter, send it out to my mother, she would print it up and send it back to me. Then I would go through it and highlight the errors send it back to her, and she would sort the errors out and send it back and forward, back and forward, back and forward, back and forward. And it took me about 18 months.
Wow.
And then when it was finally done, I wanted to continue, but I had to draw a line under the sand, so I finished it. I set up an email account from within the prison that my mum used to run, and I sent it to over 300 people. I got 20 copies printed out, and I sent them to people. I sent it to people in the House of Lords, politicians, academics, all sorts of different people, and I sent it to every news channel. I never did it to make money. I'd done it to raise awareness of what in my professional critical analysis is some of the worst human rights abuses inflicted by the British government on their own people, by any government against their own people.